Powdered water.
Perfect.
This is what it is, okay? Just empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Perfect.
Don't look now, young man, but somebody has his hand in your pocket. It's the hand of big government.
What did you say?
Hey, welcome to the show. Welcome to Powdered Water on the Wake Up Radio. I'm your host, Jackson. I want to give a big shout out to Raw on the boards and our super producer, Cindy Ashby, for putting this all together. You can check us out at onthewakeupradio.com. We're on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, and now Stitcher. Just search for On the Wake Up Radio. So excited for tonight. Got a really special guest joining us all the way from Australia. Max Igan is with us here tonight. And Max, how you doing, man?
I'm doing very well, Jackson. Thanks for asking me on, brother. It's a pleasure to come and talk to you.
Absolutely, man. I'm excited. You know, you agreed to do this show with me maybe, a month or so ago, whenever it was, and I just kind of blew my mind that you were willing to do this. So, I mean, just for those who don't know out there, this feels like a really big deal to me. Max is, he's somewhat of a, definitely a truth warrior for sure, and has been putting in work trying to spread the truth and help people realize what's going on and wake people up, and been doing radio, making films, just doing all kinds of things. And I really think that his channel out there is one of the best that's out there for sure. So I just think I just feel like we're just super blessed to have him on tonight, and I'm really excited. Max, man, I really don't even know where to begin with you, man. Like, I don't, whether you want to get into kind of the current state of things or the past, with what this information that, I guess, let's start there. How long ago did you get turned on to this information about the mud floods in Tartaria and stuff like that?
Oh, well, this latest information on mud flood and Tartaria, it's been quite recent for me, and it's been really interesting because, I've spent most of my life looking into history, and this is what got me started back when I was like 8 years old, when my parents showed me a picture of the pyramids and told me that they didn't know how anyone built it. And I kind of thought, okay, it's just pretty simple. I went out to my sand pit. I was like 8 years old, I went outside and I built one out of sand out in the backyard, and I thought, it's pretty simple, why don't they know how anyone built it? And I started looking into it, and it got me really fascinated. So I've kind of been on this quest for a really long time. But looking at ancient history and trying to figure out what happened, you kind of go with the current timeline, and you think that, well, it happened thousands of years ago. But then recently I discovered the work of a lady from Belarus called Sylvia Ivanova. She's got a channel on YouTube called New Earth, and I highly recommend people go and look at this channel. She's got some fantastic research on there. And she alerted me to the work of Anatoly Fomenko, who's a Russian scientist or Russian professor who's figured out that the timeline's all wrong. They've added at least 1,000 years to our history, the Dark Ages and all this sort of stuff. And when you start really looking at it, you start realizing that if you can realize the timeline is wrong and that all of this ancient stuff we're looking at actually wasn't so ancient, all the pieces of the puzzle fall into place. And it was a real kind of a shock for me. It was a real awakening because I'd been looking at this for so many years, like 40 or 50 years, but I'd never considered the fact that the timeline might be wrong. I mean, you'd heard people mention it. Newton had mentioned it, and a few people had suggested that the timeline was all out. But it's just a little seed there in your head, and you kind of forget about it. You just assume that everything functions in a linear way, the way we're told, But when I found the research that Sylvia Ivanova had done and pointed out some of the discrepancies in the timeline, I went back and revised all my own research and all the stuff that I'd looked at for years, and I began to realize that The stuff that's right in front of our faces in our own cities simply can't be explained. Because when we're looking for the answers to all this, we go to all of these ancient places like Egypt and the old places in Europe and all these places that we think are in the ancient past to try to figure out the story. But we don't look what's right in our backyard, in our own cities, in our own countries. And there's every indication that there was this worldwide culture that existed up until around about the middle of the last century. And they were still expunging it from the history books in the middle of the 20th century. When I say the last century, I keep forgetting that we've crossed the millennia. I say I'm talking about in the middle of the 19th century. But they were still expunging it in the middle of the 20th century. But around about 1850, there was still good traces of this civilization all around the world. And then there appears to be some event that happened, possibly what we're calling the mud flood. Something happened. And whether that happened around about 1840 or 1850 is also debatable. There's every indication that it did, or at least some event happened. But it could have also been an event that happened back in the 1600s as well. Whatever the war was to destroy this worldwide culture that we're calling Tartaria, even if it may not have been Tartaria, the interesting thing is there was a country called Tartaria in Europe which appears to have branched out and become a worldwide culture according to the maps. But, we're trying to piece it all together. We don't really know what the culture was called. It may have been individual countries, but there appears to have been a situation whereby all the countries were working together. We had free energy. Free energy was in abundance. There's evidence of the trams that used to run in New York and San Francisco. There were no wires powering these trams. If you look at really, really early video and early footage of these trams, you find that they're just running on rails and there's no wires overhead. So what was powering them? And a lot of the buildings that we're seeing around the place appear to be buildings that were designed to harvest energy. And there's every indication that we had free energy, even a pneumatic rail system that used to exist, a subway system that used to exist in New York. So lots of stuff is coming to the surface now that we haven't been told. And we're figuring out this culture that we think was an ancient culture may have started back in antiquity, but it progressed and it still existed up until quite recently. And a lot of the wars that we think were fought eons ago, such as the Battle of Troy, this was very likely fought quite recently as well. The Battle of Troy, the wars of Napoleon, Genghis Khan, all of these things seem to have been fought contemporaneously and were all actually wars for Tartaria, or whatever the country was. But there's every indication that this is what's happened. All of our history is fabricated. It's just all wrong. I would suggest that the last 100 years of history is about 25% correct, and before that, it's just a complete fabrication. And when you factor in things such as the foundlings and the orphan trains, the whole idea that they repopulated the world with children. There was some event and then they just repopulated it with children. Even what we're told about the slave trade, there's a guy who's been looking into this, a black guy from America called Dane Calloway, who's claiming that most of the black people in America are actually American Aboriginals, they're Native Americans, and that the slave trade was backwards. It was actually white children that were brought in as slaves to clean up after this whatever. I would suggest that. I don't know whether he's talking about the mud flood, but I would suggest that that's why the children were brought in, to clean up after this event, whatever it was. But we're finding that even with the foundlings and the orphan trains, there were 200,000 children per annum being shipped across the United States from east to west, 100,000 children per annum being shipped out to Australia, New Zealand and Africa. There were foundlings being collected all over Europe. There were foundling hospitals I think it was in Florence, there were 1,200 foundling hospitals, and just 2 of those hospitals received 45,000 children just in 1 year. So that's the level of child trafficking that was happening all around the world. The question is, where did the children come from? Where did the mud flood come from, whatever it was? What was this culture? How was it destroyed? Who destroyed it? How did they hide the electricity, the free energy, all the stuff that we had? How has it all been done and who did it? And it's very, very interesting to look into, but there's a lot of stuff coming to the surface right now. So I probably went off on all sorts of tangents there, but this is what we're dealing with, just trying to piece it all together, and there's so much to piece together. And even on the last show that I did, I put out a kind of a warning for people to be careful of over-exaggerating things and wanting certain things to be true and falsifying things or making up stories, because this is fledgling research that we're all discovering. There's a lot of people working on it, and it's really important that we pool our resources, pool our information, and if we do that, we will discover the real truth, and it all is coming to the surface right now.
That's what's beautiful about it. That's, for me, especially with the changes that I made in my life. I mean, it was a drastic change that I made, and, I really started living from a place of truth and being honest, first of all with myself and then with other people. And what I found from that is that, it's allowed me to just kind of be who I am without questioning it. And you don't have to worry about, you don't have to worry about, like upsetting people or anything like that, because what you're doing is true, and you're standing behind what you're saying and what you're doing. And, I think that the truth is beautiful because it always comes out. And I think it's crazy to me how much effort has been put into destroying our true history and destroying who we really are, where we come from. I mean, even as far as, going as far as the DNA. I mean, what do you think about that? About the, how they say like we have like the 10 missing strands of DNA, or that it's junk or whatever. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, crazy stuff. It's exciting times. I mean, it's really exciting times to be living. But yeah, I mean, junk DNA, it's not, it's just, this is what's shut down, so we can't access the higher senses and access what's around us. And, and what you're saying about just letting all that go and being who you want to be, that's everything that this system prevents us doing. And when you look at the concept of free energy, how this has been taken from us, what we could do if we had free energy. Because like almost everything we do is centered around the gathering of energy. Just to pay to be alive. If you didn't have to pay to power your house, and you could just create any device which would harvest energy from the ether and invent things, and, think of how much freer we would be if we had this sort of a situation. So, everything that's done in this society is designed to keep you running on the treadmill and paying to be alive and keep you caught up in this matrix. And it's just a meme. It's just an idea. And when you think about what's been taken from us, it's pretty uncomfortable when you look at it. It's we've got to wonder whether we'll ever get our real history back. It must exist somewhere. Someone must know what's going on. But we've really had a number done on us. We really have. And if you look at some of the records that we're finding, even when they cover up history, they can't cover it all up. That's the thing. They may try, but it's very difficult to burn all the books and to hide all the information. But we're finding records of things such as rockets that existed back in the 14th and 15th century, that they actually used rockets when they were doing the battles in India. When Britain took over India and there were all the wars in the 1800s and stuff, they're actually using rockets in those wars. There's actually not photos, but there's paintings of them using rockets, and there's designs you can find in books. There's old books you'll see, and there's all sorts of designs of different rockets and different type of electrical weapons. Like I said, there's evidence of a pneumatic rail system that used to exist beneath New York. There's all sorts of stuff to show that we did have free energy. And you think about with that, and then how much that keeps us running on the treadmill, how much we're not allowed to discover ourselves and be ourselves. It's pretty freaky when you think about it, And I've actually found evidence of a worldwide language as well. But all of these cultures and all these buildings and all of these different races and countries all seem to work together and all live in a reasonably harmonious state because they're all using the same technology. They've all got the same buildings. A lot of the stuff that we think are churches, these aren't churches. These appear to be power stations. And even when you look at some of the modern designs that they've created on how to possibly harvest ethereal energy, if you look at the designs of these things, they all look like the spires on churches. And there's even photos we've found of the World Fair back in the 1890s and 1900s, where people are displaying electrical devices in the World Fair, and they all look like little church steeples, all these little pointed, spiry-looking things, all, I would suggest, for transmitting wireless energy. So, a lot of stuff is coming to the surface, brother. Really, really exciting times. But, people have to get a little bit of focus on it. They have to stop all the division. There's an awful lot of division in the resistance at the moment. And we have to put all this down. We have to allow people to think differently and realize that we've all been played. We have no idea really about what's going on. And that's a really uncomfortable thing for people to admit as well. Because a lot of people who've been researching this stuff for a lot of years have formed opinions and consider themselves to be authorities on things. But, we can't really, we can't be guaranteed of the validity of any of the books that we've read, of any of the information that we've got. History has been so well falsified. I mean, sure, there are snippets of stuff in there that is worthwhile and is probably quite true. But in regard to history and how we got here, and even stuff that happened 100 years ago or even 50 years ago, history is written by the winners, and we don't really know. And people have to admit that and see how we've all been played and how all these rabbit holes have been put there just to keep us running down them and keep us distracted so we don't ever see the bigger picture. And the beauty of now is that this bigger picture seems to be coming out. There's a lot of fields of research that are coming together. A lot of people are seeing the need to collaborate, and it's a really, really good thing to see, because there was an awful lot of division interjected into the movement 3 or 4 years ago, and that seems to be a little hump that we're overcoming now. So it's a beautiful thing. Exciting times to be here, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it can feel very overwhelming at times, and that's something that I personally experienced was, whenever I first started realizing a lot of these things, I changed my diet and I started, doing different things with my water and, just trying to be more conscious of how I spent money and how I did, things, and started talking to people about, chemtrails and, just various things like that. And then, the more I learned, there's a quote that I heard recently that says something like the closer you get to your goal, like when it comes to knowledge, will only show you how you're further away, which is kind of a little bit of a frustrating thing to think about. But it's also very exciting, because I think that there's just so much that's happening, and it's weird to think about whether we'll see, like a real shift and a total change in our lifetime. And I don't know. I obviously none of us really know whether that's going to happen. I mean, the system seems to be working quite well for them, although we have these, protests and these riots going on. But I don't really feel like that's an answer. I mean, when you've got people that are out in the streets holding up their country's flag and saying they're protesting the government, it just seems pretty backwards to me.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's a weird situation, isn't it? I think we will see change. I think we'll see change in my lifetime. Like, even in the next 3 to 5 years, I think we're going to be living in a very different world. I think that a lot of people are waking up. I think we're reaching a critical mass. I really do. I mean, the average people on the street now that you couldn't talk to before now also perceive that there's something terribly wrong. They may not want to talk about it. They may still want to keep the blinkers on, but inside they know there's something wrong. And a lot of people wouldn't even admit that 5 or 10 years ago. I have people come up to me, and people that I haven't seen for 35, 40 years, and say, wow, some of the stuff that you used to tell us in school, and we used to think you were crazy, it's just what the world is now. How did you know? I said, well, it was obvious. And so even these people are coming back to me now and saying, well, what's going on? Even, I've had my sisters wake up. These are people that would never, ever wake up, and they are. So, there's a lot of good stuff happening. And, history, it's so easy to hide, and it's so easy to falsify. And even with trying to wake people up to chemtrails and this sort of stuff, it's very difficult. People will, there's all sorts of counter arguments. A lot of people say it's ridiculous. It's condensation and rah. So this is one of the sort of weird topics that we get into that it just turns into a circular argument. But when you start pointing out to people the fact of, hang on, what's this building doing here? How did we build that? Even it's beautiful here in Australia, because Australia was apparently colonised in 1778. And I can find pictures of Sydney in 1820. That's a full-blown city. What do we do that in 32 years? The convicts that came over here, they just went and dug all these quarries and built all these Gothic Roman-looking buildings with all this intricate scroll work and all these great churches and all this stuff. How do we do this in 32 years? Give me a break, you know? The buildings were already here. Yeah, and look at San Francisco and just ask the questions. San Francisco remember the stories we're told about California, the gold rush, you know, everyone was there waiting on one side with their wagons and then they all raced across and claimed their land, remember? And when they claimed their land in San Francisco, they thought, well, look, since we're going to build a city here, we better build this huge underground mega sewer system about the size of a 4 or 5 layer underground city, huge mega stonework under San Francisco. We'll just build this before we build our little huts and build the city. Of course we will. Who built that? Who built that sewer system in San Francisco? How did that happen? Really, the settlers built that when they did the gold rush? Come on. You know, let's really put all this stuff and examine it. It doesn't make sense. None of what we're told makes sense. You know, and when you look at the monuments and all the stuff that's flying around the world, none of it makes sense. But then you factor in the reality that they changed the timeline. Okay, well, why did they do that? And what happens? And you can look, and like I said, you can find the photographs of the pneumatic rail system that they had. You can find video footage of trams running without power lines above them. You can find all of this evidence to show that we actually had free electricity as recently as the turn of the last century. So this has been taken from us, and it's been taken from us for a reason. And, you know, all these people that are looking for free energy and all this stuff and all these things that we see, it was there. It was abundant. It was all around the world. And, you know, we can see this. We can see the evidence of this right in front of us. So these are kind of easy things to wake people up to. You know, I've had actually a lot of success with this, just walking uptown and looking at a building and saying to someone, what do you think about this building, you know, and getting into a discussion with a stranger on the street. And they walk away scratching their heads going, wow, that guy really started making a lot of sense to me, you know. And we've had massive success in other actions as well, like with the 5G and all the stuff that we're facing in that direction, because all this it's all part and parcel with the same thing. It's all about the control grid. But, you know, there's every sort of thing that's happening. There's all these spokes that have been put in the wheels now that's slowing the system down, and people are realizing how much we've been played, how much we've been all played off against each other, how much history has been changed, and even moved around in places. We don't even know where anything is or who anybody is. You know, our history books are just all wrong. Even when you look at Fomenko's work, Anatoly Fomenko, he suggests that Moscow is actually Jerusalem. So that's interesting. And when you look at the stories of people such as Ulysses, I like to bring this one up. Ulysses was a Greek warrior, obviously, but he claims he sailed to an island to the west of Greece, which he named as Syria. And the only island we find west of Greece is England. So Ulysses called that Syria. And it's suggested that's where Surrey gets its name. And if you look at Syrian history, you'll find the story of King Arthur in Syrian history, but the names have been changed. But it's the same story. Same amount of sons, same amount of daughters. All these people did the same things. Married people did all this stuff, all exactly the same story. So that's kind of been superimposed over as British mythology when actually it's Syrian history. And England has been whatever that is, and perhaps that's some island we don't even know what it's called, but that apparently was Syria. So what was Syria? Who we don't know. You know, so they've taken little bits of history of this race and that race and moved it all around. We've got no idea. We've got no idea what was going on. Even when you look at the Great Wall of China, Marco Polo never saw this thing. It's not in any of his memoirs. So who built it? Why wasn't it mentioned in his memoirs? He did all this stuff and saw all these things. He just didn't notice this huge Great Wall going across the country, you know, because it wasn't there. It wasn't there when Marco Polo went across Europe. You know, so who built that? It wasn't built by the Chinese. It was probably built by the Mongols to keep the Chinese out. Or there's other suggestions that it may have even been built by Alexander the Great. But whoever built it, it was built quite recently, and it's not anything like we're told. So, you know, you start looking at these things and pointing out the discrepancies in history and start looking at some of the technology that exists that you can still find in books and photographs of what they had in the middle of the last century. And you begin to crack that little shell in people. They get a little bit indignant about it. You know, hang on, if we had free energy then, well, hang on, I could use some of that. So why has this been taken from us? What's going on here? You know, they start to really question things and start wanting to look at these old books and start wanting to ask questions. It's cracking the shell on people. And this whole mud flood, Tartaria, free energy unveiling that's happening is really going a long way to uniting a lot of the independent media, which is something that I'm really, really happy to see happening.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I think it's really cool how it kind of bridges the gap between the people that want to, I don't know, between flat Earth and, globe believers or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I don't really like the term flat Earth, although, I mean, I would consider myself one. I mean, that was, flat Earth for me was what really opened my eyes to the idea of free energy, because to me, it exposed the idea that there's all this land and all these resources that are, purposely hidden from us, and that essentially every government in the world has agreed to keep it to themselves and not let the people have access to it.
Yeah, well, like when all that came on the scene, I could just see how it was going to be played as a divisive mechanism. And I've got a lot of questions about the globe, but I've also got a lot of disagreements with the whole flat Earth thing. So, I think it's the problem of claiming this is, and then putting out all these models of the sun's doing this and there's a dome. You don't know, you haven't been there, you're just muddying the waters. Nobody knows what this realm is. We've been fed all sorts of information that none of us can really verify. We can verify in certain parts to a certain degree, but with the whole flat Earth, globe Earth debate, it doesn't matter what information you put forth. If you believe one or the other, then you're going to fight tooth and nail to defend that belief, and it'll go on forever. It doesn't matter. And none of us are free enough to find out. Yeah, none of us are free enough to find out. What we need to realise is that we've been lied to on all counts, and were we to pool our resources and just admit that fact that we've been lied to, there's a criminal cabal running this world, there's masquerading this government, that have all concocted this whole fictional scenario of whatever it is, and you can choose to believe whatever you want, but ultimately you don't know, because you haven't been there, you haven't been able to have the freedom to go and put all these questions and mysteries to rest. And they may be hiding land, they may well be doing it, but it doesn't mean the Earth is flat for them to do that. The Earth could be bigger than what we think it is. There could be land up at the North Pole, there could be land at the South Pole. The Earth could be hollow, the Earth could be anything. We don't know. We just don't know. But we have to establish the freedom to put all these mysteries to rest. And what we've got to do is realise we've been lied to on all counts, irrelevant of what you think this realm is. And if we can pool our resources and respect each other enough and simply stop complying with this system, perhaps we can establish the freedom to find out. Perhaps we can get back to what we should be and realise, get back in touch with our higher senses, realise what we've got here, how incredible this world is, and what we could do with it. And all we're limited in is by our imagination, by our belief systems of what we believe is possible. I just would love to see everybody put all this stuff down. But, Flat Earth has encouraged people to look into all this stuff and to accept the possibility of free energy. Well, that's great. But, stop with all the attacks. Stop trying to browbeat people into compliance. And same with the globe earthers. Stop trying to browbeat people into compliance. We've all got a common foe here. As far as I see the world and look at it, you look at Fibonacci's sequence, you look at this is an intelligently designed place. There's nothing random in this world. Yeah. This could be a hologram. This could be an experiment within an experiment. This could be any number of things. It could be a collective projection. It could be one of us here in a mainframe just projecting itself. We don't know. And I'm open to all possibilities. I'm open to the fact that the world's a globe. I'm open to the fact that it's flat. I'm open to the fact that it's a hologram, that it's electrical, that it's whatever, But I don't know. I'm not going to make any claims. I'm only part of the way through the journey. And that's the part about it, like you're saying earlier, this quest for enlightenment and this quest for knowledge. Really it's the journey of life is what it is. When we start off, even when I was young, when I was 24, I wanted to be enlightened. You'd read all these mystical books and whatever and try to figure out what the real secrets are. And it's about the journey. It happens on the path. Enlightenment is a destructive process. It's a breaking down of all of your beliefs, but it's the journey itself. You can't ever get to that point, that place you want to get to, without making the journey there. But, when we start on this quest for knowledge and this quest for enlightenment, we think we're going to get to this state, where we're just all knowing, all wise, or whatever. We had this vision of our heads of us sitting on a mountain and glowing, or whatever, you know. But it's this place that you don't ever get to. It's the journey to the place, which is what it's all about. It's the journey. It's about the journey. It's always been about the journey. What Castaneda called it, the journey to Ixtlan. You know, the mythical place that we're all going to, that we're all searching for. That's what the journey of our life is, to get to this place. But the place doesn't exist. The place is simply a state of awareness, and the place is actually the journey. The journey is the place. You know, that's what a lot of people don't understand about life. And we've got a real opportunity through all this. So, yeah, I mean, if Flat Earth has brought all this into people and caused people to want to look at this stuff, that's a great thing. But you've got to realize it's about the journey. It's not about your claims of what you think you know or what you think this place is. And even if you are someone who's religious about it and you believe that this is all about finding God and all that sort of stuff, well, if you look at the allegories in the Bible and what happens when you bite from the apple of the tree of knowledge and all that sort of stuff, do you need to know what this place is? Is that what it's about? How does that affect your journey? It doesn't affect my journey at all. It doesn't make me a better person. I mean, sure, if we're in some controlled environment, we're living on a mine floor or whatever, and we're not told about it, sure, I'd like to know that. But I'm not going to ever find out that if I don't find myself first. And if the people around me don't stop squabbling and we don't put all of our stuff down with each other, we're never going to find out what is happening. So, you know, we've got to put it all in context, man, and realize it's about the journey and nobody actually knows.
Sure, I completely agree with that. And, I think that knowledge is, that belief is kind of the enemy of knowledge in a way that, like, once you fixate on that, you know something for sure, then it prevents you from being able to acquire more, because then you think, well, if this is this way, then anything that says other than that can't be true. And I think
Exactly. You're using this belief to judge all the other information that comes in, whether it's according to your belief. Then you're constantly looking for stuff to reinforce your belief. Yes, I've got that. Oh, but what's that? I'll leave that aside. So you start cherry picking, rather than simply pulling at the threads and letting the journey unfold as a wondrous thing that may completely amaze you at any given moment. I'm willing to put down everything I know tomorrow if new information comes along, because what do I know really? What do I really know? All you really know is how much you don't know. And when you really start looking at history and what's been done to us, how can we possibly know? It's like a tree with no roots. How can you ever figure out what the fruit's going to be? How can there ever be any fruit if the tree has no roots? If you don't know who you are and where you came from, well, you'll never discover who you are. So, it's an important thing, and it's an important thing for people to consider. It's about finding out this whole apocalypse that we're going through. The apocalypse is the unveiling, the great awakening, the breaking down of all the barriers, and that is what is happening now. So let's all respect each other through this. Allow people to believe the earth is flat. Allow them to believe the earth is a globe. Allow them to believe it's a hologram. Allow them to believe whatever they want to believe. But, like you say, and like I say, belief is the enemy of knowledge. So be careful what you believe, because ultimately you don't know. And why limit yourself by saying, well, this is, when you don't know? It could be something else. It could be something that we just can't even imagine yet. We don't know what's right around the corner. So, don't limit yourself by your belief systems.
Yeah, it's for me, it's it's just kind of crazy because the whole idea of I think maybe what was so intriguing about Flat Earth to me was the idea that it seemed like it was the biggest lie that there possibly could be. And now, as we're starting to, learn about that, it's really not the biggest lie. The biggest lie is most likely who we are, where we come from, and history and everything.
Everything is a lie, brother. That's the thing. It's all a lie. People tell me, it's the biggest. So if the Earth's flat, they're lying about it. I go, well, so what? They're lying about everything. So it's just another lie.
Yeah.
What am I? Doesn't change anything for me.
Well, I used to think, it was such a big deal because because all the money that went to NASA and, just the mind control, aspect of that, having people in this environment where they felt like they needed to, there's a lot of reasons why it could matter, they could matter, but, at the end of the day, that money that goes to NASA is not, it's
not
nothing
real.
but it's more just fake money anyway, so. Yeah.
It's not real, brother. That's the thing. Everyone's right. Oh, they spend trillions to NASA. Well, all they do is they go into a typewriter and they go, brrr, and they type it into their bank account. If they didn't give it to NASA, it doesn't mean they're going to give it to you. It doesn't mean you're going to be any better off because they just make it up out of thin air anyway. It doesn't matter how much money they get. The money's fiction. It's just something they made up to put us in scarcity. Don't worry about the money. It doesn't mean anything. That's the problem. People look at this. It only means something because of these economic treadmills that we're running on. We're forced to pay to be alive, and we've got to pay all these taxes and all this stuff because they're spending all this money for Israel and sending all this money overseas and on war and all this other stuff. But, it's all fiction. You can do everything that we're doing. You don't need money to do any of it. Your money's there for scarcity. It's like free energy. If it wasn't for the fact that we have to pay for energy, that's why we need money. If we didn't have free energy, why would we need money? If we didn't have to pay for energy, why would we need money in the first place? Because the energy you need to grow food and all this stuff. If we had free electricity to be able to running electronic devices, electric whatever, harvesters, whatever, all this stuff, what would we need? What would we need to have wars and all this scarcity and all this stuff that we're doing? And most of the wars that you see, this is about destroying infrastructure. It's about destroying the ancient culture. The war with Syria, if they really wanted to take out Assad, why they bomb Aleppo to rubble? Why don't they just go and bomb Assad's palace? Didn't do that.
Right.
Just destroy the country and turn it to rubble. Went into Libya, destroyed the great man-made river, all the stuff that Gaddafi had done there.
Yeah.
Did in Iraq, went in and destroyed everything there, raided the museum, destroyed all the culture. Mm-hmm. In World War II, bombed Dresden, bombed London. You look at the fire of San Francisco back in the 1905 or 1906, whenever it was. The Great Fire of San Francisco. What was that all about? The Great Fire of London. It was all about just destroying all the culture, destroying all the ancient infrastructure, and all the governments work together. It's just one big happy crime family. And who wants to be the bad guy this week? Who wants to be the good guy this week? We'll just cook up a war, kill more people, destroy more infrastructure. Doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything. It's fiction, And two countries say, we're going to war with each other. And then the two governments get together and say, let's have a war. They kill all the citizens and all the people. They never bomb each other's government buildings. They kill all the people and say, okay, let's stop fighting now. Hang on. If you want to have a war with them, why don't you just bomb the government buildings, If Moscow wants to have a war with America, then the Kremlin should bomb the White House and the White House should bomb the Kremlin and leave the rest of the world out of it, It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and I really think that people, a big step for people, I don't know how it's possible, but a big step for people, I think, is going to have to be finding a way back to nature. And, the whole idea of all this technology, while it's maybe it's entertaining, but that's about really the only benefit of it. And all of the drawbacks are that you lose your ability to know how to actually do anything that really matters in this world. And you become completely reliant on the system. People don't know how to grow their own food. They don't know how they use these phones. They have no idea how they're made. People don't know how anything really works. And, everything, just when you just look at the school system, there's nothing of any practical value, practical life value that's taught in school. There's not, they don't teach you nutrition. They don't teach you anything. It's just all set up so that you'll feed into what they want. And, it's just the whole idea that they've just completely tricked people into, believing that, the authority knows best and they, we better do what they say or they're going to come get us. But they're not, there's only a few of them and there's so many of us. And when you just look at all of the land that in the United States, if you drive from, just a couple states over, you'll go miles and miles and miles without seeing another person, except for maybe a cop car. And all of that land is no different than the land in the cities, but they have all these people living on top of each other and thinking that, well, that's just the way it is everywhere. It's like, they say that I've heard that on lots of, television shows as I've grown up is, they'll say things like everywhere USA or every town USA. And it's the reason it's the same in every city is because that's how they built it and that's how they made it. And they got people off the land and they bought the land. Although the reason I question the ability for people just to take back the land and start living off of it is I heard something recently about how the reason that I forget which president it was, but whoever sold out the currency basically to make it where it wasn't gold backed anymore. Part of the way that they did the debt was they promised a bunch of the land in the United States to different countries. So that might be one of the reasons why they're clearing while they were doing the fires in California, and they're bunching everybody up because it's not really their land anymore. So have you ever heard of anything like that?
Look, vaguely, but it's hard to confirm any of those reports, and it's all fiction anyway. The whole concept of countries and nations and borders and all this stuff. Again, it's all to do with the economic model. I mean, why do you need to have these segregations and stuff? You don't want to have migrants coming in. Why? Because they take all the jobs. Well, why do you need all the jobs? Because you've got to pay to be alive because there's this corrupt monetary system there. Get rid of that. There goes your problem straight away. Get rid of the bankers. So,
right.
And
people don't have to pay.
Yeah, and when you look at what they've done with the education system, they've taken everybody's life skills away. See, the tech that we're using, all of this modern technology, it's like a mirror image of the technology we should be using. If you look at this destructive type of electricity from coal-fired power stations and all this sort of stuff, and the tech that we use, throwaway stuff, and all this radioactive stuff that we're using, it's a mirror of the ethereal energy that we could be using. When you think of the concept of free energy in the old days, and the fact that this was probably even healing energy, healing electricity. When you think of the concept of churches not being places of worship but being places of healing, where you can go in there and listen to the organ music that's actually music for your organs, to heal your organs through sound vibration, sound therapy. All of this sort of stuff. All of these technologies appear to have been very much in use in ancient times and right up until quite recently. So, you've got to look at it that way. And with the education system, they've trained everybody to lose their life skills, like you say. And if you want to have any skills at all, they teach you one skill. Teach you how to be a mechanic, teach you how to be a cook, or teach you how to be whatever. And you'll do a course on how to be a mechanic or a carpenter or something. But they could teach you these skills in a matter of 6 months, but they make the course go over like 5 years, so that you spend all of this time learning all this unnecessary stuff you don't need, following all these rules and regulations, and they stretch it out. And then you've only got one skill. And you might be a great carpenter, but you don't know how to make the tools to do the carpentry. You don't know how to fell the timber. You don't know how to do this. You might be a great metal worker, but you don't know how to smelt the metal. You might be a great mechanic, but you don't know how to build the car. You don't know how to smelt the metal. You don't know how to use the machines that create the stuff. So everybody's segregated. So everybody needs everybody else. So it's all this conglomerate of this economic dependency, and it just removes everybody of their creative potential. You go back in the old days, you'd even find currency. I used to have something, it was a book of receipts. I lost it, unfortunately, but I had this very, very old book, and it was a book of receipts that we used to get in. A receipt back in the old days was a recipe. That's where the word receipt comes from. Just put a T on the end of recipe, take the E off and put a T there, and you've got receipt. Wow, yeah. But it used to be a recipe. And, for example, I might come to your house. I'd be a wandering guy. I'm just cruising around the world, get to your house. You need a fence built. So I'd show you how to build a fence. And because you'd build it with me, I'd show you how to build this fence. And as a payment, you would give me a recipe for a cartwheel. And now I'd know how to build a cartwheel. Then I'd go off to the next place. This guy needed a cartwheel. So I'd show him how to build a cartwheel. And he'd give me a recipe for how to make a glue out of certain tree saps. I go somewhere else, someone needs a recipe for glue, well, they need a fence, I can show them. They need a cartwheel, I can show them. Then they'll give me a recipe for something else. So these recipes were skills. Now, a recipe for creating a house, a recipe for a cartwheel, a recipe for a fence, a recipe for a wagon, a recipe for this, a recipe for that. That's what we called recipes. It was how you put stuff together. It wasn't necessarily something to eat, but it was just how you put it together. So we used to trade life skills, and that was a form of currency back in the old days, and that's a beautiful thing. Why don't we have those sorts of things happening anymore? And if we did, then people would be eager to learn. They'd be eager to get a new skill. Gee, look what I learned how to do today. Now we can build our own house. Now we can build our own fence. Now we can put in an apartment. Now we can put in our sewage system, whatever we need to do. Because we've got the skill to do it, because I just learned how to do it today. And everything it was a trade-off. So people work cooperatively. It encourages self-improvement. It encourages cooperation. It encourages peace and prosperity when you've got a world like that. And when you consider the concept that we probably had free electricity while we were doing this, it puts a whole new spectrum to it as well. So you think of what we would be capable of if we were still living these type of lives, and how we've been corralled into this state of people farming that we currently live in. It's quite shocking, really. But, these are things I think that can be used to wake people up. The fact that all of this technology is coming to light now, the fact that this technology existed so recently is very inspiring. The fact that it wasn't thousands of years ago. Look at the Vedic texts and the Vimana and all of these flying machines and all of these wonderful things that we hear about, and we think, wow, this is ancient, lost technology of some lost culture and civilization. No, it was just 150, 200 years ago.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool. I really like how you said that it's that it's the technology that we're using as a mirror of what we should be using, because that really makes sense. That makes sense that they would set up a grid that blankets us from being able to access what we really need. And then the idea of, that if, not everybody has to learn how to do everything, but the idea of only spending your whole life only doing one thing is just more compartmentalizing of everything. And when it just keeps people from being able to look at any kind of big picture, it makes every single person just be so narrow-minded that they can only focus on one little thing. And when in reality, if, the whole, whether it's 12 years that they put people in school. If you think about that, each 6 months of those, if you want to call it that, or every year of that, if you spent a year of each one of those learning a different skill, you would be so much more well-rounded when you got out of there. Everyone would. The goal would be in life would be to encourage other people, instead of just trying to look out for yourself and trying to make sure that you survive. The whole idea that they flipped everything so that we're in survival mode instead of trying to thrive and trying to build and create. And, it's just insane. It just really is just so insane. And
and the whole thing of, learning one skill and all this, it creates a situation of codependency rather than one of cooperation. So it encourages that. Everybody becomes codependent on everybody else. Like I said, you might be a good mechanic, but then something happens and you've got to get some other guy to come around and build your house for you or fix your plumbing or whatever. So it creates codependency. And then when you do that, there's economic value attached. There's got to be an economic exchange. There's no helping of people. Back in the old days, if you had something like that happen and you needed your plumbing done, the guy would come around and teach you how to do the plumbing. And then you'd teach him how to fix his car. So it was a cooperation thing and more of an exchange of skills. And that's what this system has taken away from us. One of the major things it's taken away from us, which creates that codependency, which creates jealousy, creates greed, creates division in the society, and puts everybody against each other.
Right, and it also denies us the ability to duplicate it. That's kind of what you're talking about to me when you say that. It reminds me of holistic healers. How I've worked with a few in the U.S. and they something they always talk about is that what they're doing is they're not. It's not like going to a doctor when you're sick and the doctor tells you what's wrong and gives you medicine for it. When you go see these people, they're training you how to know your own body and how to find out what your body needs, and they're teaching you that skill. of treating
Well, yeah.
yourself. So then once you learn that, then you can go teach your family that. And you can go teach them, then they can go teach other people that. I mean, really, there should be, I mean, this is just one tiny little thing, but I mean, there should be a healer on every block. I mean, if we're going to live in the city, there should be somebody you can go to that you can go, they're a guru in this knowledge and they teach it to you. And then you can go, and you can go spread that knowledge to someone else. And, you can be able to.
And you become your own healer. That's the thing. It's like the old saying of you catch a fish for a man, you feed him for a day. You teach him to fish, and you feed him for life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that expands on that for sure. I mean, something I've thought about recently is all the homeless people that we have, and how it doesn't. You could spend, I mean, I could give all the money that I have away to different homeless people trying to feed them, but all that's going to do is feed them for a day. And doesn't really solve the problem. It doesn't help anything. And I feel like, the whole idea of that we have so many, they say that in the United States, there are more empty homes than there are more homeless people than there are. Whatever it is, there's more empty homes than there are homeless people. So, and that's because of what?
So why are there any homeless people? Exactly. It's all economically based. The whole thing.
Yeah, it's insane. And not only that, but like the whole idea of police. I mean, why do people think they need police to prevent from robbery and things like that? But there would be no incentive for anyone to steal from anyone else if we all just were able to teach each other and to, live in this place. This place isn't abundant. There is abundance here. It's just all been hidden from us, and we've all been taught to.
It's all based on the economic model again. I mean, this is what creates crime. It's what creates scarcity. It's what puts people against each other. All crime happens because people are legislated to live in a state of scarcity. All crime, except for crimes of passion, jealousy or whatever, But all theft and all of this sort of stuff, all the social hierarchy we see, gang mentality and all of this sort of stuff, this is all to do with scarcity. People wanting to climb to the top of the pile because they think there is a pile, because the pile's been created by the economic model, by depriving them of the basic necessities of life, which is what the money system is designed to do. It doesn't provide wealth. It provides scarcity. That's its purpose.
Right, and it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter how hard anyone works or how much they succeed, because they're still just going to only be getting crumbs off of the real, the real people. I mean, not the real people, the people that have the real wealth. I mean, the idea, that the American dream, I mean, it's the whole idea of that is you have to be asleep to believe it, that you can work hard for your whole life to make enough money just the whole idea of it is just that. It's just insane, and it's just this one big circle, it's just the whole idea of you give all of your energy, your entire life to something that you don't really care about.
It's crazy too, because you work, but it's crazy too because you work your whole life to buy this house or whatever. But you buy a house, you can't own the earth. You can't own a piece of the earth. You're only here for a little while. The earth's been here for years, and it's going to be here after you're gone. You work really hard, and you get all this paper that you think is going to buy you happiness, and you buy yourself a house, and then the house owns you. You can't do anything. You can't go anywhere. You've got to keep paying it off for the rest of your life. You've got to pay for electricity, pay for the rates, pay for this, pay for that. So now the house owns you. And you've got all this stuff that you put in your house, and you're scared to go out in case someone steals your stuff. So your stuff owns you. It all owns you. You don't own any of it. And you don't experience yourself because you think it's all this stuff that you bought. Okay, I am my house. I am my stuff. I'm this guy who's got this place with these nice pillars out the front and this nice front door, and I got my stereo and I got my car and I got this and that, and this is who I am. No, it's not. It's just your stuff, and it's tied you to that spot, so you'll never go out into the world and find yourself. Yeah. That's what it does. And people don't realize that it's all backwards. Everything we're doing is backwards. Now, all of it is designed to inhibit spiritual growth and to prevent you from ever discovering yourself, because you think yourself is all this stuff that's around you, but it's not. That's not who you are. Ask someone, who are you? Oh, I'm a builder. No, that's what you do. Who are you? What are you? I'm a builder. I'm a plumber. I'm a this. I'm a mechanic. I'm a musician. No, that's just what you do. What about you? What are you? Who are you? People don't ever really look at that. They work their whole life to get this pile of stuff to sit on, and then they sit on and go, well, what the fuck was that all about? What was it all for? It doesn't mean anything. Here I am, I'm at the top of the pile, and here I am, I'm still here, and what does it all mean? They told me there was going to be this golden utopia if I worked really hard, and I got there, and I've got all this stuff, and I've got all this land, and I've got all this money, and there's nothing here. There's nothing here. It's empty. And now I'm worried about all my friends, whether they're really my friends, because they just want to be around because of all this stuff that I own, which isn't me anyway. So nobody really knows me, and I don't really know them, and what the hell was it all for? It was just all a big distraction, all of it. All it was designed to prevent you from ever discovering who and what you are and what this world really is and what you're really capable of. Because all that stuff was meaningless. It doesn't mean shit.
Man, that's beautiful. That's really interesting that you say that, because I think about the idea that that's probably a really hard question for a lot of people to answer whenever you ask someone, who are you? And they try to tell you what they do, and then you say, no, I want to know who you are. I bet 90% of people get stumped at that question and say, well, oh shit, they literally have
can't
no
answer
idea.
it. And they can't answer it, and not only that, they often get quite defensive about it.
Yeah.
Because it's confronting for them, And that's like, you're a bit weird for even asking me something like that. It's weirdo. What are you? This deep esoteric topic, or let's talk about the football, So, it's very confronting to ask that, even have to ask that question for themselves, and to try to explain it to you is very confronting. So yeah, often they get quite aggressive when you ask it. It's interesting.
Man, that's awesome. Hey, I tell you what, let's do this real quick. Let's hop into a quick break real quick. I think that's a good spot to do that. So everybody out there, if anybody wants to call in, the phone number is 678-603-4393, 678-603-4393. This is Powder Water. Listen to On the Wake Up Radio, and we'll be right back.
State vs. Us magazine. Make sure you get your copy at a location near you. Visit us on our website at statevsurmag.com. Get into the minds of the hardened convict who has been wronged by the system. This magazine will give you high-profile cases. It will give you corruption information on what's happening in the prison system, police department, and the government. Also, success stories of former inmates such as myself. If you have a story to tell, want advertisement or a feature, email us at statevsurmag@gmail.com. Visit our social media on Instagram at statevsus and on Facebook at statevsus magazine. We are the voice of the voiceless. State vs. Us magazine.
Hey, peace, prosperity, salutations, melanated family. It's your guy, Yurima Karama, again with another public service announcement. Just wanting to remind you of the Unity Walk that is taking place on December 30th, 2018 in the great state of New York. That's going to be from 12 noon until 3 p.m. at the same location as we had December 1st. That's going to be at 1942 Amsterdam Avenue at 156th Street, New York, 10032. The place is called Sisters Uptown Bookstore. Hope to see you there. Hope to have your energy in that room, and hope to add you to our melanated family. We are building. We're over here nation building, and we hope that you are a part of that. So please come out and bring some family, friends, children, but just come out so that we get a chance to meet, so that you get a chance to build with us. Peace.
Welcome back to Powdered Water. I'm Jackson, your host. It's on the Wake Up Radio. I just want to remind everybody that you can find us at onthewakeupradio.com. Then there's live and replays on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and now Spotify as well. Cindy, I know Cindy was working her ass off trying to get us on Spotify. That was a real pain in the ass. So, while you guys are at it, man, go check out the website. There's tons of information on there. There's archives. It's very, very inclusive. There's a lot on there. So go ahead and go on there. Go check that out. And if you guys like what we're doing, please keep in mind that Cindy's doing all of this herself. So if you could go on there and donate a couple bucks on there to the onthewakeupradio.com PayPal, that would be awesome. We're just trying to keep, a positive message out here that's uncensored and free for everybody. So, go check that out. Buy as a digital beer. Let us keep putting this out here. So, welcome back, everyone. I've got Max Igan with me tonight, or for him, it's in the morning. But anyway, we've been talking about a variety of things so far. So right now, I was kind of thinking maybe we could, Max, if you're willing, maybe we could get into talking a little bit about this this whole digital idea of everything. Because for me, when I first discovered a lot of this, truth or stuff or whatever you want to call it, it seemed like everything was just such a physical attack, and how we've been segregated, and all of these different the poisoning and just everything that basically just happened. And then I started to realize that they're creating this digital realm with this 5G, and how they're trying to, what do you think it is? Do you think they're trying to hand everything off to the AI?
Well, look, AI is definitely part of it, but with the 5G grid, I mean, you got to wonder whether this is even a kill grid. It's military grade technology, and it's just so damaging. The radiation that it puts out is just so damaging. I mean, sure, there's a certain surveillance aspect to it as well. AI controlled, sort of algorithm controlled surveillance system, like they're putting in place in China with a social crediting system. You need something like a 5G network to do this, to bring it all over to digital currency and everything like that. But, there might be more to it. It could possibly be a kill grid, because you can target people, you can use it for active denial. And it's also insidious in so many other ways. Talking about control and the loss of our natural resources, and the loss of our natural ability, the loss of our ability to even grow food and grow gardens and all this sort of stuff. 5G changes all that as well, because it changes the cell structure of anything it comes in contact with. So you're going to find that it's going to be much more difficult for people to grow food. So they'll need to bring in GM food that's, radiation resistant and all this sort of stuff. So, it's all about limiting the human experience more and more. That's what it's for. And, and even with the, like I was saying before the break, the fact that the electronics and electricity that we're using is kind of a mirror of what we should be using. If you can think of us as being electrical beings, and how healing the right frequencies could be, and how damaging the wrong frequencies are as well. So you see a reduction in the human lifespan with this as well. And I would suggest that we're supposed to live a lot longer than we do anyway. I wouldn't be surprised if we're supposed to live 3-4 times the length that we do now. You look at biblical texts, there's people 300-400 years old. I think Noah was 900 years old, wasn't he? So, yeah. I remember talking about his son Sam at 60, thinking he'd never grow up. So, this is what they've done to us, and this is what I think a lot of this electricity that we're swimming in now does. We're poisoned on so many levels. It isn't just physical; it's also electromagnetic. It's also energetic. And this may seem all hippie and new age and airy fairy to people, but it isn't. We can all heal ourselves, and we can all, I believe, live on ethereal energy. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if we can anyway, if we were simply aware of it and we were tuned to the right frequencies and tuned in the right way. The cultures that we had, the societies that we had, some of the stuff that we did, some of the stuff that we built, it's absolutely spectacular what we were capable of. India is a wealth of information. If you ever can travel, I really suggest going and looking through India, just looking at some of the temples and some of the old structures that we've got there. I mean, these things are absolutely incredible, the detail, and there's no way we can do stuff like this anymore. So, we're in such a precarious position, but like I said, everything is a mirror. Everything is a mirror, and that's the danger of this energetic state that we're in at the moment, this 5G energy that we're using, all this wireless technology. You know, everything on the Earth vibrates at frequencies between 0 and about 10 hertz. It's about as high as it goes. You know, everything's averages around about 7 hertz, 7.2 hertz. But this technology we're using is up in the billions of hertz, billions of cycles, trillions of cycles, you know, megahertz, gigahertz, you know, so it's all very, very damaging to the system. And also with 5G, it's a targeted system. So with the technology we're using now, the wireless technology we're using now, it's kind of an ambient signal that goes out kind of in a flat spiral from the antenna, so that and it kind of widens as it gets further away. So we're all kind of in this ambient signal around us. But with 5G, it's direct signal. So if you get a call on your phone and you're on a 5G system, that nearest 5G tower sends a concentrated beam directly to your phone. So that's going straight to you, straight through your head. If your head, the phone happens between, your head happens between you and the tower, it's going to go straight through your head. And this is a very, very concentrated microwave beam, thousands of times more damaging than the ambient signal that you're using now. You know, 5G isn't just the next generation of the same technology. It's new technology. It's directed energy weapons. It's active denial. Anybody can be targeted and disabled. And like I said, just the ambient radiation, what it's going to do to the food and to the food chain around it, you're going to see a huge loss of insects and all that sort of stuff as well, which are already being affected by the wireless systems we've got now. So that's the danger of it. But when you look at the whole social crediting system as well that goes with it, you know, what they want to head to, and really when you look at Trump's actions, you know, the whole Make America Great Again idea, what he's really doing is isolating the United States and the rest of the world. And you've got to put this in context and look at what else is happening on the world stage, which is the new Chinese trade system, the One Belt, One Road system, which Europe will soon be shifting over to. And when this happens, there's a very good chance the United States will lose its place as the global reserve currency, and that's going to see the end of the good life in the United States. Because the only reason the United States is able to maintain its position at the moment is because it controls global reserve currency. You know, the US dollar is the global reserve currency. If that changes, then all of the bad stuff is going to come to the United States. It's going to virtually turn into a failed state if that happens. And if you really look at what's going on, Trump's kind of setting all this up. And even if it doesn't turn into a failed state, I mean, that's a worst case scenario, of course. But even if it doesn't, if it becomes isolated and it gets limited in its trade options, then it's going to have to adopt the Chinese system as well to get back into the world trade situation. And you'll probably find that that's how they'll introduce a social crediting system, because if you want to trade with China, then you're going to have to use this particular currency, and you're going to have these guidelines in place to protect us all from terrorism, of course. You know, so that's kind of the way they'll do it. You know, and that's how they'll introduce the social crediting system into Europe as well. And they're perfecting this right now in China. For those who haven't looked at it, it's a very, very insidious system which will limit your purchasing power according to your social profile. You know, your political outlook, you know, things you posted on Facebook, whatever. You'll just go to buy something one day and get told you're not qualified to buy that. You're not qualified for that plane ticket. You're not qualified for that passport. You know, and there's no appeal process because it's all done with algorithms. So that's where the AI comes into it. And whether that's real AI, it's not really that important whether it's a completely conscious being making the decisions, but understanding it's an intelligent algorithm which is looking at people, at what they're posting. It's analyzing the data that you're posting on Facebook. It's looking for words, it's looking for phrases, and it's judging your personality by what you're posting and what your political viewpoints are, who you're associating with, and it's limiting your social crediting points or adjusting your social crediting points in real time according to those parameters. It might watch you walking across the street and knows that you've jaywalked, so it drops a couple of social credit points off you. So then you get to the train station, you find you can't buy a train ticket because the algorithm's just dropped a couple of points off you, and you're now below the quota that's needed to buy a train ticket. You know, so this is the way it's going. This is what they've done in China. This is the way they're going. They'll do it in real time. If they catch someone jaywalking, the algorithm will take a photograph of their face and then display it on a local bus shelter to shame them in front of all the local people. So as they're walking down the street, they see their face coming up on bus shelters as they're walking along, with the bus shelter pointing out, this guy's just broken the law. You need to shame him. So people don't want to associate with you because you're doing the wrong thing. You know, and they've even got situations in China whereas if someone, like if you're below social credit points and I ring you up, I'll get a message to say the person you are calling is on the government's social credit blacklist. Do you wish to proceed with the call? And then if I do proceed with the call, then they'll be looking at me. Why did I want to call this guy who's a criminal? You know, so it's guilt by association. So it discourages me from wanting to even call you in case I start losing social credit points. You know, and then if you do the right thing and you do all the things the government wants, then you get more social credit points and you get access to VIP areas and VIP services and all this sort of stuff. So it's brilliant social programming that they're putting in place. And this is what will be coming to all of our countries if we don't pay attention to what's happening. So this is what's being rolled out under the carpet while everyone's sitting there arguing whether the Earth's round or flat, or whether they're arguing about whether Hugh's going to save them and Trump's the good guy or the bad guy. All of this stuff's rolling out underneath it, and it's all in the tech that they're using, what is being presented to them as convenience, which is actually all about surveillance, the removal of life skills, and complete dependence upon a digital system which will judge you by your actions and what you say in real time every minute of the day. And when it's all smart, and you've got smart meters on your home, you've got a smart TV that's watching you, you've got a smart refrigerator that's listening to you, you've got a smart clock in your bedroom that's listening to your conversation while you're lying in bed and judging you according to your, you know, your thoughts and your conversations. This is where we're going. This is 1984 and Brave New World rolled up together on steroids, you know? And that's where we're going. So people need to pay attention to it.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's just how Orwellian it sounds. And just, you know, the idea that if we allow that to happen, then if you were to oppose the system, you wouldn't be eligible to do anything. You would have all of your abilities taken away from you.
Well, yeah, that's the way it goes, and they'll even take it further. So that if you're blacklisted, I mean, who do you call? Who do you appeal? I mean, the people in China who are blacklisted on the social crediting system, you know, they just go to buy a plane ticket and they're told they're not qualified. And they go, well, what do I do? And the lady on the counter says, well, I don't know. You go and ring up someone, but there's no one to ring. There's nowhere to go. If you go online and you try to do it, you get like a multiple choice thing, which never gives you the choice you want. So there's no way through the system. You're just dealing with algorithms, and there's no way through. There's no appeal process. All you got to do is try to earn your points back, but they're doing it as trust scores, they're calling it in China. And once you're deemed untrustworthy, then you're always untrustworthy. So you don't ever get your points back. That's the way it's going, and that's the way they want to take it. So, you know, and when you start looking at how they will do this legally as well, perhaps you've been put in this situation where you're blacklisted and you think, well, there's no appeal process, so I've got to get a lawyer involved. Well, then if the lawyer attempts to help you, then the lawyer will end up getting in trouble. The way they're doing it in Germany, with Holocaust denial in Germany, you know, if anyone questions the Holocaust or anything in Germany, they get charged for Holocaust denial. They can do 10 years in jail, and they're not allowed to present any information that they have to plead their case of why they're questioning the figures. And if they get a lawyer, if a lawyer agrees to defend them, then the lawyer also goes to jail. So if you can look at that and how they will apply that to social crediting, I mean, there's a working model right there in Germany. So when you look at how far China's going to take this, and when you think that this is how it will go, you won't even have any hope of any appeal process or any legal help, because anyone helps you will be blacklisted as well for helping a criminal. That's just the way it will be. And the algorithm will have judged whether you're a criminal. It will also be able to judge what penalty you get. You know, and in China as well, they've got facial recognition incorporated into glasses that the police are wearing now. They're able to pick out people out of a crowd. They got one guy, they arrested him out of a crowd of 80,000 people that were attending a rock concert. And you could pick him out of a crowd of that many people. And, you know, this is pretty full on. So if the algorithm, if you suddenly say something that the algorithm determines it doesn't like, it's been looking at your Facebook profile, it's been looking at your YouTube clips, it's been looking at all the calls you've made and everything you've done ever since the world went digital, ever since people got mobile phones. All this is collected. It's all there on the database. They've got records on you, everybody online, that go back since the beginning of the internet. They've got it all. Don't think they haven't got it, they do. So all they've got to do is when you raise a red flag, once the social crediting system comes on, once you get down below a certain point, the algorithm can simply determine, oh, well, look, Jackson has just said something. He's just said that one too many times. We're going to have to knock him down to one more point. And because he's down with that low point, he's just crossed that little barrier where now we're considering him to be a danger. So we'll consider him to be a potential terrorist. So we'll just alert the nearest police that there's a potential terrorist in the area that they need to go and apprehend. And they'll just go there and, oh, we've got to go pick up Jackson. The algorithm tells them where you are. They go to the crowd, they pick you out with their facial recognition glasses, and they just grab you and they put you into the smart prison for your sentence, which has already been determined by the algorithm depending on your social credit points. So it eliminates the need for judges, eliminates the need for all that stuff. The police just get told who to go and arrest and beat up and where to take them and how long to leave them there. So it kind of eliminates the need for government. It eliminates the need for the judicial system. It eliminates the need for anything. People will control themselves at this point. No one will want to think outside of the box or say anything wrong because they will be limited in their purchasing power. And there's nothing they'll be able to do about it because it's all digital. And when it's all digital and you've got digital locks on your house, digital locks on your car, well, they can limit you from everything. That's another thing they've done in China. If you go below a certain point in China, you can't buy plane tickets, you can't buy train tickets, and you can't rent a house. So that puts you out on the street as an undesirable, and then you become someone who's just noticeable, who's this riffraff walking around there, obviously a criminal, throw him into the prison system. So that's how they deal with dissent. They just criminalise you by default by limiting your purchasing power and limiting your access to normal essential services, and you become an undesirable, and you end up arrested and put in the prison system.
That's so crazy, and from the way you're describing it, it doesn't sound like there's any way to even redeem yourself, even in this false system.
There isn't. There's no appeal process, and like I said, if they introduce a system like what they've done in Germany for Holocaust denial, which is quite conceivable they would do that. If you're criminalised by the system, well, the system knows, the algorithms know, they've tracked you, everything you're doing. Why would you want to defend this guy? He's obviously a criminal. So why are you standing up against the system? So it eliminates the need for lawyers and stuff, really. There's no way out of the system if they put it in place, and people really do need to pay attention to what's rolling down the pike because this is extremely important. The analogy I use is that it's like people have been sitting there, we've seen this new world order coming, and we've seen this police state coming, and people are so intent on boarding up their windows and making sure there's bars on their doors and everything's keen, and they're standing there with guns looking at the windows and defending all the borders and barriers on their houses, but they haven't noticed that there's these lice that have crawled in under the floor, that are crawling across the carpet and are crawling up their legs, and once the lice get hold of them, then the dogs don't matter that are barking outside because it was always about the lice. The dogs were just a distraction.
Wow. Oh, man. All right, so what do we do?
Well, awareness, brother. Let people know what's going on and refuse to comply with the tech, refuse to comply with this system. Technology, there's nothing wrong with technology. Technology could be fine. But it's the energy systems we're using to power the type of electricity we're doing. Like I said, it's very likely a mirror of what we should be doing. The biggest tool we've got at the moment is awareness and waking people up to this matrix that they're living in. And that's one of the hardest things to do because there's so many people just screaming fear. This is why I've always kept the shows very calm and collected and just sort of very matter of fact. And I've tried to lead by example in all that I do. Be a pleasure to be around. People need to see that you are empowered and happy and you are a better person because you have this information. They don't want to see you in fear, screaming out, the sky is falling, out on the corner with a megaphone like Alex Jones, They don't want to see you doing this. They just go, well, I don't want to know what he knows. I don't want to be like that. I want to have a good life. I prefer not to know, So you've got to present it in an empowering way by leading by example in all that you do. And, helping people understand what we have the potential of being. And this unveiling of history that's happening, I think, is really helping. The concept of free energy and how recently it actually was. This is hugely inspiring, Jackson. It really is. All of this stuff. And even Tesla, I question Tesla. You know, was Tesla really who he was?
I had that in my notes. I wanted to ask you about Tesla, what you thought about him. Because
Tesla, was he really who he was? You know, or was he just presented there the way they presented this with William Shakespeare to explain all this great play stuff, which was very likely written by the Bacon Society? Did they put Tesla there? Did they create the character of Tesla because they knew they couldn't clean up the whole mess? They couldn't clean up everything. There was still going to be little books. There's still going to be little bits of free energy stuff. There's still going to be stuff that's unexplainable. So we need to create this genius who just knew how to do all this fantastic stuff. You know, is that possible? You know, I mean, maybe he did do this stuff. Maybe he just had the knowledge, the old knowledge, and just knew how to do it. Or maybe they just created him to explain away all of this this free energy that we had, and make it seem like it's unachievable. You know, this guy, he had this way of doing these things, but he didn't write any notes, and we just don't know how he did it, and blah, blah, blah. You know, we don't know. We don't know. I mean, he could have been a real character. He could have done all these amazing things. He could have just been someone who came from Europe who still possessed the old knowledge. He could have been of Tartarian descent. Who knows? You know, we got no idea what the real history is, but I have to question it. I've heard certain reports that he was a friend of Edison and they weren't really rivals, and that he was funded and put up to it by Rockefellers or Rothschilds or whoever back then.
That he was a Mason or whatever, right?
Yeah, I've heard this and I've heard that, but I don't know. You know, it's all possible.
To me, that kind of makes sense with the death rays and everything.
Yeah, you know, but looking beyond that, the fact that this technology that we would refer to as Tesla technology was very real, was very much in use, was not this wonderful guy who brought all this amazing technology to the World Fair that year. Everybody was doing it. The technology was everywhere. So that really causes me to bring the official character of Tesla and question that, you know, because this is so recent. If they had pneumatic trains in New York as recently as the 1890s and 1880s, and they had trams running without cables in New York in the late 1800s, and there's video footage you can get of them of doing this. There's the latest clip that's put out on the New Earth channel where she's talking about this, and there's video footage in that clip of those old trams running. So, you know, this was around in the middle of the 1800s or the late 1800s. So this really causes me to question the official stories we've got of Nikola Tesla.
It's so crazy. What about, somebody just asked on the chat, they just asked, wasn't his home broken into on a record?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is what we're told. We're told all this stuff, you know, but like I said, I can't prove any of it. We're told, they broke into his home and stole all his notes, so we'll never get access to all this stuff. It's all hidden away and secreted. The CIA, NSA, whatever, all these mythical things we hear about it. It all makes perfect sense, and it creates that great shroud of mystery of the all-powerful Illuminati.
Yeah, but maybe that's just part of the cover-up, right? Like maybe that's just the way.
Story.
It's just to make people
cover story, because when you look, maybe
just one guy.
Because when you look at all this stuff, it's there. All this technology is there in the 800s, so maybe that's just a cover story. Sorry for talking over you, brother. A little bit of lag there.
Oh, no, you're good. I mean, that makes total sense, man. I mean, it's like, it makes sense that, you know, we create this character and then we kill the character, but we tell you that he was the only one that knew how to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so then people say, well, shit, I can go buy a Tesla car, but I can't do any of the other ideas. There's no reason to even look into it.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to create someone like Nikola Tesla. But like I said, I mean, I don't know that. That's just a speculation on my behalf. But only because you can see this footage of this stuff. You can see the stuff in the World Fair, but that Tesla wasn't at. All these weird church-looking spires and things, and you can see these trams running on free electricity, and you can see all of these old spires and all these old buildings, which are all designed to harvest energy. And even when you start looking at things like the Vedas and the Vimana, the flying machines and stuff they had. And that's, again, another interesting part about it, because when you look at the Vedas and you look at all these ancient texts, such as the Vimanika Shastra and stuff that I talked about in my book, all this stuff, you put it back to being thousands and thousands of years ago, but perhaps it wasn't. Yeah. Perhaps it was thousands of years ago, but it still existed up until a couple of hundred years ago. And that, I find, is the most inspiring part about all this. That's where the whole matrix begins to break down. And a lot of people that I've brought this information to, like in the last three radio shows that I've done, I did a show called History is a Lie. We've been set up. And then What If? And then Hidden History, Stolen Technology, or something like that. Stolen History, Hidden Technology. Those 3 shows, I've got something like 300 or 400 emails a week in response to those 3 shows. People saying, you've changed my life. You've changed the entire paradigm of how I look at everything now. You know, just this whole concept of how recently this happened and what we actually had. It inspires people because it shows just how easily we can get back to what we had. Because it wasn't that far away from it. Yeah, all we got to do is pull this facade down, this matrix, this belief in authority, and stop attacking each other. Realize that we're all being played off against each other. Put all this research together. Start pooling our resource sources. Work cooperatively, irrespective of people's belief systems. Put it all together. Put it all on the table. Let's figure this mess out. But don't depend on government to save you, because they're all working together. You know, the whole thing is one big puppet show, folks. You know, Trump isn't addressing any of this. You know, everyone's thinking Trump's going to save the day and change America. He's not talking about false history or free energy or any of this sort of stuff. He's financing Israel. He's financing the war in Yemen. He's still destroying infrastructure. In there, the embattled president trying to do all this stuff. Politics is a theatre. It's a fiction. It's a puppet show. It's one big crime gang. You know, government would only really work. Government would work better if we're going to have government at all if you remove politicians from the equation and put in good managers of infrastructure. We don't need politicians in government. That's what's wrong with the whole thing. So, yeah, there's no remedy to be found in government. There's no remedy going to come from the system. You know, the whole concept of taking down the deep state. You know, the deep state is what happens when they close the doors and turn the cameras off. That's the deep state. Now, they sit down, they shake hands, and they have their suits and all this stuff. Then they close the doors, they go inside, they start snorting cocaine, getting hookers and saying, okay, who are we going to fuck with this week? That's what they do. You know, they don't care about you. They don't care about any of that stuff. It's all one big puppet show, the whole lot. And people need to get that through their heads, you know. Step away from it, folks. Time to step away from the whole thing and work cooperatively with each other. You know, that's the way out. And like you said, return to nature while we've still got some there. Now, get out of these cities, return to nature. You don't need to be dependent upon these things. But that's another reason why they've taken free energy away from us, because you can't just walk out of the city, because you need energy to survive. You need to be able to do things, you know, in the world we've got.
You got to be close to a power source, right?
Yeah, well, in order to survive in any degree of comfort, you do. But what if you could just build some little device and harvest energy from the ether and do it that way and build your place and do what you want? I mean, you know, and even looking at some of these old temples and things, I mean, I wonder how they built some of these. And when I look at what we can do now with 3D printers, I wonder whether they use 3D printers to build some of these old temples. You go to places like Angkor Wat in Cambodia, and every brick on the place is engraved. Every brick is carved. This huge temple structure, all laid out perfectly geometrically. All these towers, all perfectly the same geometrically. Could have been 3D printed. Who knows? You know, it might be outrageous for people to think about, but hey, we can 3D print buildings now, so why couldn't they do it then? You know, perhaps they'll just do using a different medium, a type of concrete, type of aerated concrete or something. You actually find buildings in India as well, where the top levels are made out of aerated concrete, something that we're told was invented in the 20th century. You know, you find whole temples in India with the whole top section made of this stuff. And the top section's much, much lighter than the rest of the building. And these look like landing pads for vimanas and flying ships and all sorts of stuff like that. And vimanas and flying saucers and all of this sort of stuff, these are replete throughout Indian texts, throughout the Vedas. A text that I mentioned earlier, the Vimanaka Shastra, is a text. And when you look at things such as the Ramayana and the Indian texts and a lot of the Vedas, they're kind of all related around semi-religious texts or about the gods or the adventures of the gods or whatever. But this one particular book, the Vimanaka Shastra, it's just a flight manual. It just tells you what clothing you need to wear for different flying machines, what substances you need to make the machines out of, what diet you need to be on in order to fly the machine properly, how to maneuver the machine in different wind currents, which areas not to go through because there's certain vortexes and wind currents there, how to handle the machine when a flock of birds comes along. Boring stuff. I mean, no religious text. These are flight manuals, pages and pages of flight manuals. What's that doing there? What's that doing there? Well, it's just part of this old religious teaching they had. Well, how is this a religious teaching? It's not. It's flight manuals, and it's quite boring reading. You know, it's like reading a bloody fighter jet flight manual. You know, why are you going to do that if you're not a fighter pilot? So, you know, all these texts exist, and all of these depictions of Vimanas and flying saucers and flying craft exist. And yeah, things were very, very different, brother. And yeah, it's all coming out. It's all coming out. So it's good. It's a good thing.
That's beautiful, man.
I keep getting back to that topic, don't I? I'm kind of excited about this history thing. You can tell. No matter what we start on, somehow I seem to find my way back to that topic. So feel free to shift my focus if you like.
No, you're good. I think it's super important, man. I mean, I really think that if we can get everyone to, or if we can get the more people that we can get to realize just the possibility that everything they told us could be a complete lie from everything that, you know, I mean, you've just been taught all these little stories your whole life. And, you know, as I grew up, I began to question that, you know, a lot of them just didn't really make sense. And so more and more as we go along on this stuff, it's like, holy shit, none of it's not just small holes in those stories anymore. It's that they don't make sense at all.
Yeah, it's huge holes. And thing, I mean, you can just considering the concept of the foundlings and the orphan trains, how easily it would have been to change history. If there was an event, you know, 150 to 200 years ago where they managed to depopulate a lot of the earth, possibly through whatever caused this, what we're calling a mud flood, whatever it was, we don't know, but some event obviously happened. You know, you find the bottom layers, and you'll find it all through America. You'll find buildings where the bottom layers of them are built. There's a whole floor below ground. And it wasn't built that way. This has happened later, and they've simply paved over the top and put in new roads and all this sort of stuff. But whatever it was, if you can consider that there was an event, a depopulation event that happened about 200 years ago, and then they simply repopulated the world with children, it all begins to make sense. They just taught these children whatever history they wanted to teach them. You know, how long would it take to change history? You know, one generation. You know, and I look back at my generation, I look back at my lifetime, and my parents were messed up on TV and drugs and alcohol, the same as everybody. I mean, they were good, they were upstanding people. But when I look at it and look at what the lifestyle was like back in the 50s, these people were living very superficial lifestyles. They were onto the Beck's powders and the Vincent powders and drinking sherry and beers down the pub and rah. And the television had just come in, which was programming them. And I look at them and I think, well, you know, what came out of that? Now I look at the change in my lifestyle and the programming that's gone on through my lifestyle. And what do I really know about the world? All I know is what was taught to me in school books. And I didn't believe any of it. It didn't make any sense because I'd been looking at the pyramids since I was 8. So I started arguing with all my teachers, and I only lasted 3 years of high school. And not even 3 years, 2.5 years of high school. I just said, I've had enough of this. And left and became a musician and traveled the world trying to figure out what's going on. But I think of how easy it was for them to hide history simply by repopulating the world with children. And when I look at some of the old prisons and stuff, like even down here at Port Arthur and some of the prisons in Tasmania and the old convict prisons that they've got here, these are all very, very small cells. And when I consider who they were bringing here was children, it all makes sense. It all makes sense. And if you brought children here as workers and you set them up just to clean up the mess after whatever event you'd caused after you'd murdered all the population, you'd be teaching these children whatever history you wanted. And they wouldn't even be asking about history. That's not something they're going to be concerned with. They're going to be concerned with the rigors of survival, just how hard their life is. You know, this is just the way it is. This is just what my life is. They're not going to be asking questions like that. They're just going to be doing what they're told. You know, and then you gradually build them up into this culture. I mean, I wonder, my mother and her 5 sisters or 4 sisters, were they foundlings? You know, who was her father? My grandfather, was he really her grandfather? You know, my mother's not alive now, so I don't know. But she remembers having a quite disturbed childhood, and her mother died when she was quite young, and her father got a new wife, and they were on a big sheep and cattle station in Tasmania. But where did all the kids come from? Were they really born there, or were they brought there? I have to question all these things, and that's just 2 generations. That's just my mother and me. So I can see how history. I can see how history could have been completely reformed just in my mother's generation and my generation. And if I hadn't left school at grade 10 and gone out and looked at all this stuff and thought this is all wrong, I wouldn't know what I know. And I can see why the people around me are so programmed, because they went through that education system and they think that all that is true, but it's not. And you can prove it's not. You just got to open your eyes and look around you to prove that it's not. But no one wants to ask the question because they're scared of what everyone will think about them if they ask the question. They want to look people at me like I'm an idiot or something. So, you can see how easy it would have been done. All they had to do was repopulate the world with children. That's all they had to do. And there's all the evidence that they did that. All the Dickens novels and the stories of Oliver Twist and the Chimney Sweeps and Tom and the Water Babies and all the old movies that we used to see, all the kids selling newspapers on the streets and all the kids working shining shoes and all that sort of stuff. Put that programming in people's minds. Little Orphan Annie, Heidi, all these stories of the kids, the Pied Piper of Hamelin, which there's every indication was a real event. It probably wasn't about running the Pied Piper and leading them off by music or whatever, but there's legends of the town of Hamelin in Germany where all their children were stolen. So it's quite interesting that there's legends of this all around the world.
Man, it's so mind-blowing. It really is. So what do you think, how would they, so if they wipe everybody out, where do you think the kids would come from?
Good question. There's a lot of underground bases on Earth, isn't there? When did they build them? We know there's all these domes, deep underground bases. How many kids go missing now? With the figures I'm told, the figures are, I'm heard up to 8 million children a year go missing. Whether that figure is true, I don't know. But when you combine all the missing kids from so many countries, where are all these kids going? A lot of people think, it's just pedophile activity and stuff. Well, is it? Is it? Are they taking these kids underground and teaching them whatever? And are they about to be brought out for the new wave, for the new event, for the new reset? Are people waking up too much? Do they intend to use sonic weapons or plasma discharges or whatever the tech is that they use? The directed energy weapons they're using for the fires in California. However they do it, maybe that's where the kids come from. I think the technology that we've got now, it's just not new technology. They've had this technology the whole time. They just created the concept of the Industrial Revolution in our minds. Think about how I grew up and what the world was and how confused I was when I grew up and we were just living in this place and I couldn't figure out why we had to buy land or any of that stuff. I thought I'd been born into the wrong world. And then a television came onto the scene, and then I saw the gradual rise of technology to what we've got now, which when I was a kid would have been perceived as magic, the stuff we've got now, and it's progressed so quickly just in my lifetime. Like in the last 40, 50 years, the rise of technology has been absolutely phenomenal, like an exponential curve, so I think it already existed. I think they just bring it out and they filter it out. I think the flying saucers that people see are the old Vimana that they used to fly around in from the old days. They've still got the tech. I've seen flying saucers myself. I've seen them in broad daylight. The question is, who's flying them? Were they aliens or were they just from the underground bases or whatever? I think that all the tech that we've got now, they already have. They just filter it out to people. What we're doing, whether we're living on a quarry floor, whether we're just doing mining operations, what is going on here. This environment of ours is being strip mined around us, and I can't see where all the resources are going, how we're using them all. So, it's anybody's question, but it's anybody's guess. But there's every possibility that the kids came from the underground bases, and that's where the children are disappearing to now. Wouldn't surprise me. Just a hypothetical, just a suggestion. I don't know, but all the evidence is there. All the possibility of that to be a reality is there anyway. I wouldn't say all the evidence is there, but all the dominoes are there. All the pieces of the puzzle are there for that to be a distinct possibility. So it should be something that is considered by people anyway. The flat earthers are saying, well, the only place the children could have come was from other parts of the globe that we don't know about, extra lands. Yeah, that's a possibility too, if the earth is flat, which you don't know. It's the same thing. Anything is a possibility. All we can do is speculate where the kids come from. But we do know these deep underground bases exist, so that's a distinct possibility as well.
That makes total sense to me, man. That like really, holy shit. What do you think about? Do you think they're down there cloning people and stuff like that too?
Look, I don't know, brother. I hear all sorts of stories of what they are doing and whoever they are, and I mean, all these things could be rabbit holes. All these things could be just things to keep us entertained. I don't know. You know, I can speculate, but I don't honestly know.
You know what's crazy, man? You know what's crazy about what I'm getting from this conversation, which is really fucking awesome to me, is that the whole idea of us not knowing, that I think that would scare a lot of people, and it would make a lot of people feel, you know, uncomfortable. But in a way, it's empowering and it's freeing, because it allows you to think that all of the, I don't know, I mean, just a lot of shit that we've been told could have just been to keep us in fear. Like, I mean, that shit could not be real too.
Absolutely. You know, it's mind-opening. If you can realize how much you don't know, it's mind-opening, because you're not limited in your possibilities of how quickly freedom could be achieved. You know, and it's mind-opening, and we don't know. We don't. People like to think they do because they like to have something to cling on to. But really, it's a dependency. It's like a desperate hope or something that they're right, that this is what's happening. You know. But if you can free your mind, really free your mind, and be open to all possibilities, it's absolutely inspiring. And they're not all powerful. You know, all you need to do is control the television and media network, and put a few pyramids with eyes on them around the place, and put a few Freemason crosses on buildings. Make sure that the Freemasons incorporate Euclid's 30-second supposition into all their buildings, and train them to do that. And people will think that you're this all-powerful force that controls everything. Oh my God, look, it's in The Simpsons. Oh my God, look, it's there in the movie. Oh my God, look, it's there on the building. Oh my God, it's in the magazine. But if you're the one person who owns the building and owns the magazine and owns all the media and owns the government, well, you know, you can just put a few signs around the place and the people will think you're all powerful. And that's what the whole concept of the Illuminati. I mean, sure, there's a group of elite people that do bad things, but they're not as powerful as they think that, as you think they are. If they were, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. They would have taken me out of it. As long as, you know.
That's interesting, man. That's another one that I always go back to.
That's one I get all the time.
Why would they go to? Yeah, why would they go to all this
trouble? Time? If what you're saying is true, how come you're still alive? I mean, well, shit. What do you want me to do? Kill myself? Will you believe me then? You know. Maybe it's because they're not all powerful like you think they are.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, sure, they're pretty powerful, but they're not as powerful as you think they are. We have far more power. We hold the whole system up through our compliance to it. You know, the system can't function without us. Our belief in authority and our failure to believe in ourselves is the whole problem, which is what all this is about, getting back to what you were talking about before. All this tech and all this working, all this stuff we've got to do, so we never have the chance to find ourselves. We think it's all about climbing to the top of the pile and thinking that's what it is. I need to realise that there's nothing there when we get there. So, you know...
Oh, hey, Matt, we have a caller, man.
We
have a caller.
Okay.
Hey, caller, what's up?
Peace, Jackson. Peace, Max. Brother Cam, man. How y'all doing tonight? Great
Hey, man, thanks for calling in.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask, because you even touched on it just a second ago, talking about that, how these people don't have all this power, you know? It's like an illusion. And, you know, just looking at, like, even the 5G stuff that they're rolling out right now, and how they're putting in this electronic infrastructure, this basically electronic warfare in people's neighborhoods. You know, like, what are we really looking at when it comes to this technology? Like, what kind of threat are we facing with this as people? Besides, you know, even beyond just the health impacts. Like, these are weapons that they're installing. Like, can you just touch on that a little bit?
Well, yeah, like it's active denial. It's the sky's the limit really with what they can achieve with the 5G technology. I mean, they can target individuals for active denial. They can disable individuals. And when you look at it, you need all of these barriers and all these poles everywhere. So they could section off your house. They could cordon off your house. They could imprison you at home. They could do all sorts of things with this technology. But the real damaging part about it is that it's microwave technology. You know, directed energy weapons they can use from this technology, and it's going to be poisoning all the food and changing your cell structure and just limiting your lifespan with everybody. I mean, that's really the main part about it, is the limiting of the lifespan, a further limiting of the lifespan. And like I said, directed energy and active denial. The sky's the limit. I mean, any military application, you just got to go to a website and look up 5G military applications, 5G active denial, and you can see all the patents that they've got of all the stuff that's possible with 5G. You know, it's through the roof. I mean, just about anything you can think of, they can do with the 5G system. They can cause you to have your eyelids are itchy underneath your eyelids, so you gouge your eyes out. I mean, it's all, you can read their patents. It's all there in their patents. Right. It's incredible.
So,
you know, they put voices in your head.
Right. You're talking about targeted individual stuff, you know, for anyone that may or may not be familiar with that. Like, that's insane. Listening to what people talk about it, like the voice of God technology, you know, and this is all stuff that the government is now disclosing that they actually can do. You remember that sonic attack in Cuba and the other one in China. Now they're saying, oh yeah, we have experimented with directed energy weapons and voice of God technology. But I wanted to ask you too, because in the last couple of days, really the last couple of weeks, I've been hearing the propaganda that we only have so much time to live, 20, 25, or 50 years from now, we're all going to be dead because of climate change. Like, is that just what they want? Like, is this really like the population control that we've all been talking about, that elimination of the population, and people are just accepting the fact? Because a lot of people have come to me and been like, well, we're not going to live past this point anyway, so basically fuck my life, in a nutshell.
Yeah, a lot of that is programming, I think. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there's an event that they're planning, some type of reset event, whatever caused the mud flood, whatever they do. I mean, they have technology that we don't know about, and it wouldn't surprise me at all, if the world's going to be a very different place in 5 or 6 years. But it doesn't need to go that way. I mean, I think they're programming people to accept it, so there could be a plasma discharge or whatever. They could just call it, But I think we're in a state of we're in a kind of an ice age at the moment. I don't think the poles should be frozen. I think the world should be far more temperate than what it is. But I think they're preparing people, just saying, we're all going to die, so it doesn't matter anyway. I've seen a lot of kids saying that we're all going to be dead in 12 years, so it wouldn't surprise me if a reset event that they're going to carry out or plan anyway. Wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, directed energy weapons and stuff that they're doing, they've got these directed energy weapons, these fires in California. I don't know if you saw my last radio show where I showed these kids that built a directed energy weapon out of a microwave, out of a magnetron in a microwave.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
So if you think they don't have directed energy weapons, well, there's a couple of kids in microwaves. So what do you think the military's done with this tech?
And they blew up a cell phone or a couple cell phones instantly.
Yeah, easy, So, and that's just a couple of kids with a microwave with a tin can on the end of a broomstick, for God's sake. So,
literally.
Apply that to the military and you think what they can do from a helicopter. And you look at those fires in California, look at the fires in Paradise where all the houses are burnt to white ash and none of the trees around them are burnt. It's a forest fire that doesn't burn the forest. How did it even get to the houses if it didn't go through the forest to get there? Anyone asked that?
Exactly.
It was a forest
those
fire.
Waves, those millimeter waves and those microwaves, like you can't X-ray a tree because of the way of the fibers, because of the barking in the fiber inside. You cannot X-ray a tree.
Exactly, and you look at the fires, and the houses are reduced to white ash, and they've still got plastic swing sets in the backyard because this plastic's microwave safe. It's pretty obvious what's going on here, folks.
I have a question. I mean,
do we have?
Oh, I'm sorry.
We have somebody else on the line, huh?
Oh, yeah. I just slid in like a devil's dick. I'm like, I'm here now.
All right, man. Well, thank you, fellas, man. I'm going to listen offline. Thank you, guys.
All right.
No,
thanks.
How do we hold these individuals accountable of these projects? That's what
Well,
I want to know. I want to entertain dialogue like that.
Well, it's finding out who the individuals are. That's the thing. The rabbit hole is so convoluted and the paper trail is so convoluted. It's finding out who the individuals are and who do you charge? What do you charge them with? Who do you use to charge them? What court system or legal system do you use? Because it's all corrupted. You know, like if we could find ourselves and just say, hey, look, we're not going to do this anymore, and step away from it. Well, it'll be the ones who scream at us. That's who to point the finger at. But then even then, I mean, what are you going to do? That's why we never see any end to this whole pedophile situation and stuff that's going on. Well, because everybody's compromised. Even if you expose a pedophile ring and take them to the court, you're going to find that by the time you get to the big wig judge, he's compromised as well. So he's not going to find him guilty, because if he does, he's going to go down. And it's the same with the head of the education system, and the head of this and the head of that. I mean, what they do, they're brownstone operations. They go and they just go people. That's why they've removed us from our natural sexuality so much, so that people are living in a state of sexual tension away from their natural sexuality, so it's really easy to go and get them into compromising situations. Meet some governor or whatever. Yeah, great guy. I've got 10 grand. Let's go out for dinner, Get a couple of hookers, Yeah, nice young hookers. And then you do it again, then you do it again. And then eventually you get a couple of hookers and they're 14-year-olds. And you take them to a room that's got cameras all set up in it, and you get him on film with a couple of 14-year-old hookers. A couple of 14-year-old girls, or even better, a couple of 14-year-old boys, if you can do that, Yeah. And then you've got him in your pocket. And then you say, okay, now you're mine, I own you, and you're the governor of California. So what you're going to do, first mission you're going to do for me is you're going to go and get the head of the legal, the police, you're going to get the commissioner, you're going to get the judges, you're going to get all these 10 people, and you're going to take them out to dinner, and we're going to get a bunch of hookers for them. And I'm going to brownstone all of them. And that's what you do. And then you've got everybody in your pocket, and that's how they do it. And that's what we're dealing with. So, even if you want someone to point the finger at and you want some accountability, you're not going to get it within this system. The best thing we can do to free ourselves from this system is to just down tools and walk away from it and support each other. Because it's all fiction. It's all a meme anyway. If we suddenly support each other, ones who make the most noise, they're going to be the guilty party, and we can just get all of them. We're going to put them all on Christmas Island or something. We'll give them all a hammerage, and they can have their war.
But the thing is, we need, and I agree that entirely. But we need to. I mean, it comes a point when the people that we're really going to see real changes, the people that are getting the W-2s from these individuals. We're going to have to get law enforcement on our side, because that's the picket fence right there, in essence.
Well, no,
people
it's
get
hard.
Huh?
I know we do, and it's difficult, and we can't do that by fighting law enforcement and fighting the police and putting out videos and all this sort of stuff, because these people are as programmed as anybody else.
Exactly.
The problem is that everybody's programmed. It's even when you look at the forbidden word, the Jewish question. If you really want to look at
we don't have time to go there. We don't have time to go there.
No, but just to put it in one sentence, but just to, even if you want to look at that, if you want to look at mind control, well, these are the first people who ever were put under mind control. So how can you hate them for it? Because it's all mind control. The whole system is mind control. Trauma-based and fear-based mind control, all of it. So you can't hate the police. You can't even hate most of the lower-level politicians. They got no idea what they're doing. If we can, and people say, oh, we've got to provide a better way and show a better system. Well, the better way and the better system is in your heart, living in cooperation with the people around you, and simply walking away from the system. That's how to do it. Non-compliance. That is the new system. If you suddenly adjust your moral compass to do the right thing in all that you do and never step outside your moral compass, we don't have to change anything in the system. The system will change around organically because it will have to.
Thank you for your time, brother. I'm gonna take off, man. That's awesome.
No, calling in. Thanks for calling in, John.
Bye-bye.
But see, that's the thing, we're trained to step outside our moral compass in all that we do, and if we stop doing that, the whole system has to change around us. And if anybody offers you a new system, the Zeitgeist movement or Ubuntu or anything, if you haven't changed your moral compass to begin with, it's not going to work. You're going to end up back where we are. But if you do change your moral compass, then you don't have to offer a new system. The system has to change around us. It's really that simple. Just people can't see the forest for the trees.
Man, that's a hell of a way to put it. That is absolutely a hell of a way to put it, man. I love it. Love everything that you said, man. And, man, this has been a great conversation. I hate that it's that time that we got to come to an end, but it is. So, man, I just want to say thank you so much for joining, Max. And thank you to everybody who called in. You know, you guys can go check us out at onthewakeupradio.com. Donate, man. You know, throw down a couple bucks. Help us keep doing this that we're putting out. Tomorrow night we got Event Horizon with Ray and KB. Then I know for sure on Wednesday we've got Cynthia McKinney is coming on for the Black of It on Wednesday. That's going to be a dope show. So everybody tune in for that. And Max, thank you so much, man. I just can't tell you how grateful I am for you coming back. And I just got a message from the producer saying she wants you to come back on soon.
My pleasure, brother. Happy to come on and have a chat anytime. Do say hello to Cynthia for me when you have a chat to her.
I will. Yeah, so thank you guys. Thank you for all the listeners. And, you know, I just wanted to, you know, once again say thank you to Raw on the boards and, you know, Cindy, our super producer, for putting this platform together for us. I wouldn't be able to do it without her. Thank you for everybody. Thank you, Max. This has been Powdered Water. I'll be back in 2 weeks. Everybody have a good night.
Our main base of operations. Our main